Well, welcome everyone to the Warwick War Memorial Centenary ceremony, when we'll be dedicating 2 new plaques with some recently discovered names. A particularly warm welcome to some of the relatives of those named on the new plaques who are here today. I may not get all of them, but Pat Martin and her grandson, Barbara Bayliss, Gravel and Mick Warwick, and Belinda Lever, Susan Ward, and Mavis Ward. So it's really nice that you could come today. I'm Rick Thompson, the Secretary of Unlocking Warwick, the Town Council's volunteers, who've been researching the story of the memorial and the stories behind the names on the plaques. Today, the memorial is 100 years old, to the day. And it's a striking example of an Eleanor cross. It's 36 feet high, erected on this small patch of ground because during the First World War, the casualty lists were posted on boards on the church railings here on this corner. Today we're dedicating 2 additional plaques provided by Warwick Town Council with the names of local men who gave their lives in the 2 world wars and who for various reasons had been missed when the original plaques were created. The new bronze plaques are quite bright. That's the World War I one. The World War II one is just around here. But they will weather with time to match the others. So to say a little more about what happened on this spot 100 years ago today and the Warwick War Memorial project, I'm delighted to introduce the Mayor of Warwick, Councillor Richard Edgington.
Thank you, Rick. The Warwick War Memorial was unveiled on the 10th of July 1921 by the High Sheriff of Warwickshire, Lord Alfred Percy of Guyscliffe House, honouring 358 men and one woman from Warwick who died in the so-called Great War. The Warwickshire Advertiser reported that there was a huge crowd at the impressive ceremony, quite 5,000 people. There's been no more inspiring sight of Warwick for many a long day. Many relatives brought floral tributes that were heaped at the memorial on that day. The report continues. Lord Percy formally presented the memorial to the town and requested the Mayor to take it into the safe custody of the corporation. He said it should call to mind the deep debt of gratitude we all owe to those and saved the country from the oppression of a ruthless and pitiless enemy. They would be remembered.
In 2015, I discovered my grandfather's cousin, CCAA Capers, who lived at Coton End, Warwick, had died at Passchendaele in World War I. I wasn't sure why he wasn't on the memorial, but guessed it was because he was missing in action and his body was never found, like so many in that bloody conflict.
And I think that my relatives hoped that he was still alive. The town clerk at the time asked me to find any other missing names, which I did, and then he kindly agreed to finance the extra plaque, which has been taken down again. We've taken that one down, incorporated it, as Rick said, and we found 4 from the First World War, which we're going to talk about now. The first is Arthur Henry Gunn. Arthur was a farm labourer living with his parents at Hawkes Cottage in Heathcote. At the outbreak of the war, at the age of 19, he signed up for the Rifle Brigade. He served in France, but was discharged in 1917 because of ill health, which, according to the official papers, was aggravated by the strain of active service. He died shortly after the armistice and is buried in Warwick Cemetery.
Algernon William Percy. Algernon was the only son of Lord Percy of Guyscliffe House, the younger brother of the Duke of Northumberland. Algernon, known as Bobby, died in the Battle of Jutland when his ship, the battle cruiser Queen Mary, blew up, killing nearly all the 1,300 crew on board. It was his father, Lord Percy, who unveiled this memorial exactly 100 years ago. Algernon's name was not on the plaques, probably because he has a memorial at Milverton Cemetery near Guyscliffe. But the Percy family have told us they will be very pleased to have Algernon's name now on this Warwick Memorial.
Charles William Ward. Charles was brought to our attention by his 2 nieces, Pat Martin and Barbara Bayliss, and his nephew Jonathan, who was unable to attend today. Pat is here with her grandson, also Susan Ward and her mother. Thank you so much for letting us know about your uncle. Charles was born in Wasperton and was living there with his 5 brothers and sisters in 1911. By the outbreak of the war, the family were living at 56 West Street, Warwick. Charles died in battle on April the 10th, 1918, during the final stages of World War I. He was just 19 years old.
Okay, and our fourth person was John Woodfield. He worked as a grocery warehouseman. He joined the Royal Warwickshire Regiment and while serving in France rose through the ranks to become a company sergeant major. He died in 1919 from war-related injuries and is buried in Kenilworth Cemetery. My thanks to Susan Torr of the Kenilworth War Memorial Project for bringing John to our attention. Moving on to World War II now. Despite the thousands of hours that myself and the other researchers had spent, we always felt it was important to complete this work by providing similar information for World War II fallen. Hence, myself, Tricia and Helen researched the names and found men via the newspapers or being contacted by relatives. And that work has culminated today in the men taking their rightful place on our memorial. My colleagues Tricia and Helen will now give brief details of those fallen for World War II.
The first is Walter Aston. Walter lived in Beecham Avenue in Warwick and was a member of All Saints Church in Emscombe. He died of his wounds in an Italian prisoner of war camp in 1944 at the age of 25.
Douglas Burton. He lived at 64 Emscombe Road. He joined the RAF as a volunteer in 1941. He was killed during a night bombing operation in June 1944, aged 21.
Jack Colborne. Jack was born in Warwick in 1908. He was brought up at 46 Coton End and went to Warwick School. He was a captain in the Royal Engineers and was killed during the Dunkirk evacuation in 1940.
Fred Constable. He lived in Bowling Green Street and also went to Warwick School, but at the age of 15 emigrated to New Zealand with a group of other boys. He fought with the New Zealand Expeditionary Force in the Middle East and was killed at Tobruk in Libya in 1941.
Alfred Green. Alfred lived at Cliff Hill in Warwick. He loved aeroplanes. He got his pilot's license and even built his own plane for flying practice. When war was declared, Alfred joined the Air Transport Auxiliary after the RAF had rejected him because of poor eyesight. He was killed in a flying accident while ferrying military aircraft in 1941.
Percy Hirons. Our thanks to Janet Arthurton, a family friend, for providing us with information regarding Percy. Janet is on holiday, so can't be with us today. Percy, known as Mick, was born in Longbridge and later lived in Sherborne. He was the youngest of 5 children. He enlisted in the Royal Warwickshire Regiment in 1940 and then transferred to the Wiltshire Regiment. Mick was killed in northwest Europe in 1944.
Augustus Jennings. Augustus was a career soldier with the Royal Warwickshire Regiment, living at Budbrook Barracks. In 1940, he was the Company Sergeant Major, or CSM, of a unit of the Warwicks who were holding back the German advance to allow thousands of troops to be evacuated from Dunkirk. When they ran out of ammunition, they surrendered. But instead of being taken prisoner, about 100 men were herded into a barn by the SS and murdered in the notorious Wormhout massacre. A survivor later told how CSM Jennings had thrown himself on the first grenade to be lobbed into the barn in a vain attempt to protect his men.
Ralph Jordan. Ralph lived at 66 Hanworth Road and was the son of a coal miner, one of 13 children. Ralph worked at the Lockheed factory in Leamington before volunteering for the Navy. He was working in Brighton at a naval training establishment in October 1941 when a German fighter strafed the building and Ralph was killed instantly. Our thanks to Rebel Warwick for providing us with information regarding Ralph Jordan. Rebel is here with us today.
Thank you. Belinda Lever is also here and will read a few words about her uncle, Len Sleep.
Len Sleep. Len was the 6th of 9 children and the family lived at 32 Wathen Road in Warwick on the Packmoors estate. His parents both worked at Hatton Asylum. Len was a factory worker, but also in the territorials for 4 years before joining the Royal Warwickshire Regiment at the outbreak of war. He fought in France, but died of his wounds in Dunkirk in May 1940 at the age of 20.
Jack Smart. He and his wife Jessie lived at 43 Victoria Street. He served as a corporal in the Army Pay Corps and was captured in Hong Kong on Christmas Day 1941. He died in a Japanese prisoner of war camp just 7 weeks later.
So those are the new names commemorated on the plaques. Thank you very much. Now there are more than 480 names of service people from the relatively small county town of Warwick remembered on our memorial. I'd like to invite the Mayor of Warwick, Richard Edgington, to lay a wreath to mark the centenary of the memorial and to dedicate the previously missing names. And the message on the wreath reads simply, "Not forgotten." Thank you very much indeed, Mayor Edgington, and Angela Clark from Warwick Town Council for organising the splendid plaques. And thank you all to the guests who have attended this short ceremony. The local newspaper, the Warwick Courier, has asked us to send them some pictures. So we'll just spend a couple of minutes taking a couple of photos that capture the event appropriately. So thank you once again, everyone.
Thanks for coming.
Thanks very much.